A Korean billionaire came home long after midnight without a word to anyone and froze in his own nursery doorway at what he found his nanny doing with his twin daughters. Picture having more money than you could ever spend and still not being able to buy the one thing you want most, your daughter's smile. Since losing their mother, Hana and Yuna had stopped smiling for anyone. 4 nannies tried, 4 nannies left. Then one woman walked through the gate with nothing but patience and a gift none of the others had. What happens next will change everything you believe about grief, love, and second chances. Before we get into it, if stories like this one get you right in the heart, hit that like button and subscribe now so you don't miss what happens between them. Okay, let's get into it. Maya Bennett stood in her mother's kitchen at 11 at night, running scales on an old plastic recorder just to keep her hands busy. 2 years ago, people called her Dr. Bennett in training a board-certified music therapist with a caseload of NICU babies. Then the county cut the program's funding. The same month her father's hospital bills came due, and neither one came back. She was 32 now, temping wherever an agency would place her. Her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. "Hello," she answered, wary. "Good evening. Is this Maya Bennett?" "Speaking." "This is calling on behalf of the Lim residents. You applied for a live-in nanny position 2 weeks ago." Maya's chest tightened. "You've been shortlisted. The position is caring for Mr. Lim's twin daughters, Hana and Yuna. The salary is generous. Housing is included. Can you start immediately?" She swallowed. "Yes, I can start." The woman gave her an address in Bel Air, told her they needed her there by tomorrow evening, and said a ticket would already be booked under her name, just her ID at the airport counter. The family would cover the flight, and a car would meet her on arrival. When the call ended, Maya stood very still, heart doing something between fear and hope. "Mama," she said, walking into the front room. "I got it." Her mother looked up from her mending, and a smile broke slow across her face. "The Lord doesn't miss appointments." Then, softer, "It's live-in?" "Yes, ma'am." Her mother nodded the way she nodded at everything that mattered. "Then go be what you were trained to be. Those babies don't know it yet, but they're about to get a doctor, not just a nanny. Don't worry about me and your brother. We'll manage." From the corner, her younger brother Malik looked up from his homework, said nothing, but there was pride in the way he sat up straighter. That night, Maya packed 1 good bag, 2 dresses, her Bible with her old certification card folded into the front cover, a photo of her father she almost didn't bring, and then did. Before she turned off the lamp, her mother stood in the doorway. "Remember what I always tell you," Mama said. "Rhythm always outlasts noise, baby. You just have to be the one still counting when everyone else stops." "I'll remember." Sleep came in pieces. She thought about the babies she'd once been trained to hold, about the way a scared nervous system could tell in 1 second whether the one holding it was steady or just pretending. She whispered into the dark, "Lord, go ahead of me." Across town, up in the hills, a house sat glowing behind iron gates, cold despite all its light, a house Jaewon Lim had designed himself the year before he married. He hadn't added a single new line to a blueprint since So-Yun died. Inside, he stood at the wall of glass he'd once been so proud of, just surviving another night. He had a dinner with investors in an hour. Down the hall, 2 little girls slept turned away from each other, like they'd already learned not to expect much. Morning came like an order. Maya bathed, pressed her 1 good blouse, twisted her hair back neat. Her mother pressed a small travel Bible into her palm at the door. "For strength," she said. Maya stepped out into the Atlanta heat, boarded a flight west, and stepped off hours later into the dry gold light of Los Angeles. She didn't know the house she was walking toward had gone through 4 nannies since Christmas. Bel Air didn't look real. The hedges were trimmed like sculpture. The car the family sent glided up a hill so smooth Maya barely felt it turn, and then black gates rose in front of her, tall as a church. A security guard stepped out of the gatehouse, scanning her with polite suspicion. Name? Maya Bennett. I'm the new nanny. He checked a list, spoke into a radio, and the gates swung open slow, like the house itself was deciding whether to let her in. The driveway curved past a fountain that probably cost more than her mother's house. Marble steps, glass everywhere, catching the sun so hard it looked like the building was on fire. Maya whispered to herself, "Don't shrink in here." A woman came down the steps to meet her, spine straight as a ruler. "You must be the new nanny," she said, in an accent Maya placed as Korean. "I am Mrs. Han. I have run this household since before Mr. Lim was born, and I raised his wife myself. I will be honest with you from the start. We have gone through 4 nannies since December. None lasted a month." Maya's throat went dry. 4? Mr. Lim is exacting. The girls are a lot. Mrs. Han's mouth pressed into a thin line, somewhere between warning and grief. They walked through a foyer lined with photographs. A tall man in a dark suit, a woman with a laugh caught mid-motion, 2 babies swaddled at a hospital, a first birthday cake. And then, abruptly, no more photographs, just bare wall, freshly painted over something that used to be there. At the far end of the living room, a man stood with his back to them, framed by a wall of glass over the whole basin of the city. A drafting table sat untouched near the window, gathering the particular kind of dust that only settles on things people have stopped pretending they'll get back to. "Mr. Lim," Mrs. Han said, "the new nanny has arrived." He turned, unhurried. Younger than Maya expected, maybe mid-30s, features sharp and composed, but his eyes carried something heavier than tiredness. "You are Miss Bennett," he said. Not a question. "Yes, sir. You have experience with children." "Yes, sir. I trained as a music therapist. NICU, mostly, before the program lost its funding." Something flickered behind his eyes, catalogued and set aside. "My daughters are difficult. We have had challenges." His jaw flexed around the word. "I expect competence, not chaos." "I understand, sir." Their names are Hana and Yuna. They are 2 years old. They were very attached to their mother. His voice caught, just barely. "She's gone. Since then, they trust no one." "I'm sorry for your loss," Maya said quietly. He gave one short nod, closing the subject like a door. "Feedings at 8, 12, 4, 7, naps at 10, and 2, if they allow it. Keep them safe. Do not disturb me unless it's necessary. I have a dinner tonight. I won't be back before midnight, if at all." From upstairs came a sudden wail, then another, twin voices climbing over each other like sirens. "They're awake," he said, something tightening in his face. "Mrs. Han will show you up. If this doesn't work, you leave today. I don't intend to fail." Maya said. Mrs. Han's eyebrows rose, unconvinced as she led the way upstairs. "They all say that." At the nursery door, Maya breathed once, then pushed it open. 2 little girls stood gripping the bars of their cribs, one glaring with fists already balled, the other clutching a worn yellow blanket like it was the last solid thing in the world. Maya's training kicked in ahead of her nerves. Too much noise, too much silence, nothing steady in between. She'd seen this exact face before, on infants who'd spent their first weeks under fluorescent lights instead of a heartbeat they could trust. "Hi, Hana. Hi, Yuna," Maya said gently, though she wasn't yet sure which was which. The fierce one Hana hurled a stuffed rabbit across the room. Yuna's lips started trembling, and then the wailing began in earnest. Both of them, a wall of sound filling the nursery. Maya knelt by Hana's crib first. When the child cocked her arm to throw something else, Maya didn't flinch. "Go ahead," she said softly. "I'll still be right here after." She picked up the rabbit, set it gently back in the crib. Then she turned to Yuna, reaching through the bars to touch the edge of the yellow blanket. Hold on tight, baby. I'm not going anywhere. Bottles didn't work. Rocking didn't work. Diapers didn't work. Because none of it touched the actual problem. So she stopped trying to fix them and did the only thing her training had ever really taught her, match their heartbeat instead of fighting it. She sat on the nursery rug, one baby in each arm, and slowed her own pulse on purpose until two racing hearts had nothing else steady left to follow. She began to hum, not a real song, just a single low note held even, the way she'd been trained to anchor a dysregulated infant. No lyrics, just rhythm, patient and unbroken. Slowly, Hannah's cries broke into hiccups. Yuna's sobs softened into shudders, then quiet. The digital clock blinked 2:14 For the first time all night, the room went still. Maya whispered into the silence, "If you wake up again, wake me too. We'll find the rhythm together." She didn't know the dinner had ended early or that Jaewon had told no one he was coming home. His car came up the dark driveway with its headlights already off, an old habit from nights he didn't want to explain. He let himself in bracing for the sound he'd come to expect, crying, chaos, some new apology waiting for him. Instead, nothing. He climbed the stairs into a silence he didn't trust and found the nursery door open just enough to see inside. He froze. Maya sat on the rug, back against the crib, both his daughters curled into her, humming some low, even note, like their crying had never scared her at all. For a moment he saw a flicker of his wife in the way she held them, and it hit him harder than he expected. He didn't say a word. He eased back down the hall, like a man backing away from a flame he wasn't ready to feel the heat of. By sunrise, Maya was asleep sitting up, both twins curled against her chest, as if their small bodies were already testing whether her promise would hold. Morning did not bring peace. Hannah refused her cereal, like royalty being served the wrong tea. Yuna would only eat if Maya sang between spoonfuls. By 10, nap time turned into a tug-of-war over a stuffed elephant, both girls screaming until Maya pulled it free, kissed it dramatically, and pressed it to Hannah's cheek. "This one's already been loved on. Smells like hugs." Hannah blinked, suspicious, then tucked it under her chin. Yuna, seeing her sister settle, sighed and closed her eyes too. Silence. Finally, Maya's phone buzzed. Her mother. "How's my girl?" Mama's voice, warm even 3,000 miles away. "It's hard, Mama, but I'm still here." "Course you are. You know how to hold a rhythm steady better than anybody I ever met. Remember, rhythm outlasts noise," Maya finished, smiling despite herself. "I remember." By afternoon, the girls were flinging crackers off their high chairs, and Maya bent again and again to pick them up. "Mrs." Han appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, expecting the same scene she'd watched 4 times before a nanny at her breaking point. Instead, she found Maya cross-legged on the floor, letting Hannah braid her hair with sticky fingers while Yuna pressed cracker crumbs onto her cheek like decoration. "If we make a mess," Maya said, laughing, "we clean it together, okay?" Mrs. Han blinked, said nothing, and left. By evening, whispers moved through the staff. The cook muttered over the stove that this one wouldn't last either. But the housekeeper said quietly, "She's made it through the night. That's already more than the others managed." Upstairs, folding tiny clothes, Maya whispered to her sleeping charges, "Small progress is still progress." In the hallway, Jaewon paused outside the door, listening not for crying, but for its absence. In the end, he walked away, but slower than he had the night before. The next afternoon, the heat pressed hard against the glass walls, and both girls grew restless again. Maya looked around the too-polished nursery and thought, they need something they're actually allowed to ruin. She found butcher paper in the playroom closet, rolled it out across the patio tiles, lined up jars of washable paint, and carried the twins outside in their diapers. Mrs. Han appeared, alarmed. "What are you doing?" "Letting them make a mess on purpose. Maya said simply. The girls eyed the jars of red and yellow and blue like they might bite. Maya dipped 2 fingers into the blue and dragged a stripe across the page. See? Just colour. Then she pressed Hannah's palm flat into the yellow and stamped it beside her own. Hannah shrieked, delighted. Una gasped, then broke into giggles, and within a minute, both girls were slapping their hands into the paint, laughing the kind of laugh that comes from somewhere too deep to fake. On the veranda, J1 lowered the phone from his ear mid-sentence. His call forgotten. His daughters were laughing, not the polite sound they made for guests' real belly-deep joy. He hadn't heard that sound since So-Yun was alive, kneeling over a canvas with a brush in each of the girls' fists. He'd told himself the laughter left with her, and yet here it was, spreading across the tiles in handprints he hadn't asked for. Maya glanced up, caught his eye, and simply nodded the way people do when they both recognize something rare happening in front of them. That night, contracts spread out and untouched, J1 replayed the patio footage twice, staring at the shape of laughter he could still hear, even with the sound off. He picked up his phone, typed a message, deleted it, typed again. Finally, it went through. Thank you for today. Maya stared at the screen for a second, before she believed it was real. She typed back. We'll keep trying. Down the hall, J1 read her reply and let his eyes close, the sound of small laughter still moving through him like something alive instead of something lost. Over the next several weeks, he pulled back, calling her Miss Bennett again, every conversation strictly feeding schedules and doctor's appointments, no more lingering in the nursery doorway. He told himself it was proper she worked for him, and grief had a way of making a man mistake relief for something it wasn't, Maya noticed. She didn't chase it. She just kept humming through bath time and let the distance sit there unspoken. The good days didn't last uninterrupted. On a Tuesday morning, the house gave a low groan and the whole world tilted. Maya had the girls down for their nap when the first jolt hit a hard shudder that sent a framed photo crashing off the wall. The twins woke screaming. Maya was already moving, scooping Hannah from her crib, reaching for Una, half dragging both girls toward the heavy oak table in the hallway. The house groaned again, glass humming like it remembered how to break. Maya got both girls under the table and covered them with her own body, holding the same steady note she'd used that first night. A frightened nervous system needs a calm one close by, earthquake or not. It lasted 11 seconds. It felt like 11 years. When the shaking stopped, somewhere down the hall a pipe was hissing. Mrs. Hand's voice, sharp with fear, was calling names through the dust. "We're okay," Maya called back, hoarse. "We're okay. Mr. Lim is at a downtown site inspection," Mrs. Hahn said, ashen, gripping a phone with no signal. "The lines are down. I can't reach him." Maya didn't wait. She moved the girls into the safest room in the house per the emergency plan, taped inside a kitchen cabinet, J1's own plan. Drafted the year he built the place and stayed there through 4 aftershocks, humming until her throat gave out and became more breath than sound. J1 reached the gate a little after 2, coated in dust from checking the building he'd been inspecting 8 miles away, phone finally reconnected, calling her name before he was even through the door. "They're here. We're okay," Maya called back, and something in the whole house seemed to exhale with him. He found them in the pantry, the girls asleep against her despite everything. His voice cracked. "You should have reached me the second it happened." "The lines were down. I tried 9 times. He closed his eyes, the fear folding into something heavier. He knelt down slowly, like his own knees didn't trust the floor anymore, and touched Hannah's hair, then Una's, like he needed proof under his own hands that they were whole. "Thank you for not leaving them. They're my girls too," Maya said, voice worn thin. "At least in my heart." He didn't answer out loud, but something in his face agreed. "Mine too." Near dawn, Neither of them having slept, the aftershocks finally stopped. The girls slept deeply for the first time since the quake, wrapped in blankets on the pantry floor because neither adult could bear to move them somewhere less watched. Back in the nursery, once cleared safe, the girls tucked in with cool cloths and whispered prayers. Jaewon lingered in the doorway longer than usual, his tie long gone, his composure finally cracked open. "My wife's name was So-yeon," he said, quiet enough that Maya had to turn to hear him. "She used to sit out on that patio with tea and talk to the girls before they were even born. Swore they could hear her." He gave a broken half-laugh. "The pregnancy was hard. She was on bed rest for months, scared most days, and I was always at a site inspection or a client dinner instead of home with her. I told myself if I just worked hard enough, I could fix everything else so it wouldn't matter that I wasn't there. She started hemorrhaging during delivery and never stabilized. Work doesn't fix grief. It doesn't fix absence either." Maya let him talk. "Grief wasn't something you argued with. It was a tide you let it come in, and eventually it went back out. She would have liked you," he said, meeting her eyes. "Thank you for staying, for not running when the ground actually shook." "I know what it's like to hold steady when everything around you doesn't," Maya said softly. "My father died owing more than we had. I lost the job I loved because of it. You learn to keep your own rhythm going no matter what's falling apart around you. How do you do it?" "I don't always," she said, a small smile pulling at her mouth. "Some days I just fake the rhythm until it turns real." She paused. "I have a little brother, Malik. 17, about to graduate, already applying to engineering programs. I promised him I'd help him get there. Every check I send home is a brick in that promise." Jaewon looked at her a beat longer than the moment called for, filing that away without saying anything about it. Hana stirred. Maya crossed to her, laid a steady palm on her chest until the small breathing slowed. Jaewon watched the child settle under her touch, and something in him, some wall he'd built high enough to keep the grief in and everything else out, quietly gave way. "Teach me," he said. Maya blinked. "Teach you?" "To be what they need." His eyes, usually so guarded, were open. "I don't know how anymore. Maybe I never did." "Okay," she said, smiling. "We start small. We start now." That evening he held a bottle for the first time in a very long time, Maya's hand steadying his, clumsy. It worked anyway. A few nights later, unprompted, he pulled the dust cover off his old drafting table and sketched something small. A window seat built into the girls' room, low shelves they could reach, a bench wide enough for 3. He didn't tell Maya what it was for. He just started building it, sawdust collecting on cufflinks he'd stopped bothering to remove. Over the next several months, the whole rhythm of the house reshaped itself. Jaewon learned to burp Yuna without panicking, to attempt tiny hair clips with fingers built for blueprints, not braids. He read bedtime books in an accent his daughters found endlessly funny, voice softening with every page. Some evenings he disappeared for an hour with a handsaw and came back smelling like fresh-cut pine, and nobody asked why, though everybody had started to guess. The staff noticed. "Boss smiles now," the cook told the housekeeper. "At walls, even." Mrs. Han, who had once sharpened her eyes at every new nanny like she was timing a countdown, started lingering at the nursery door, and one evening Maya caught her standing very still in the hallway. Listening to Jaewon read in his terrible accent, her eyes wet in a way she didn't explain. Not everyone had made peace with him moving forward. So-yeon's mother, Mrs. Kwon, had never fully forgiven him for the difficult, frightening pregnancy that took her only daughter out of the world. She'd said as much once, at the funeral, quiet enough that only he'd heard it. Since then, she called on the girls' birthdays and little else, her visits stiff and short. When a photo of Jaewon laughing with the twins in a public park reached her, sent by someone she'd quietly hired to keep watch, she didn't call to say she was glad. She called her lawyer. One evening the paint came out again, Maya kneeling over fresh paper with the girls, Jaewon watching from the patio in his shirt sleeves. Then, without a word, he dipped 2 fingers into the red and dragged a stripe down her cheek. The girls shrieked with laughter. Maya gasped, grabbed the yellow, and swiped it across his jaw. He laughed, really laughed, rough with disuse but entirely real, and for a few wild, colourful minutes there were no titles in that yard, no boss, no staff, no mansion weighed down with old sorrow. Just a father, a nanny, and 2 little girls, covered head to toe in colour and completely, finally happy. From the kitchen window, Mrs. Hahn murmured to the cook, "This house is not the same house anymore." A week later, a car Maya didn't recognise sat parked across the street 2 mornings in a row, Mrs. Kwon's driver, the same one who had brought her to the funeral. Jaewon said nothing about it at dinner, but the next evening a letter arrived from a law firm Maya had never heard of, and he read it twice before folding it into his jacket pocket like it might disappear if he stopped looking at it. On a Saturday when Jaewon was buried in calls, Maya took the girls to the small park 2 streets over, the one with the yellow slide Hana loved. A woman was already crouched near the bottom of it, phone raised, filming the girls with the unhurried confidence of someone who didn't expect to be stopped. Maya stepped between the lens and the slide before she'd decided to. "Can I help you?" Maya asked. The woman lowered the phone, unbothered. "I'm their grandmother, Mrs. Kwon. I don't imagine he's mentioned me." Something in the set of her jaw was familiar, the same stubborn line Maya had seen in Hana 100 times. "I don't need your permission to look at my own grandchildren." "You could just ask to see them," Maya said carefully, "instead of filming them like evidence." Something flickered across Mrs. Kwon's face, not anger exactly, something closer to grief wearing anger's clothes. "Evidence is exactly what it is," she said. "For a judge, if it comes to that, my daughter is 2 years in the ground, and her husband has a new woman raising her babies. Tell me how that looks written down." She left without raising her voice again, but Maya didn't breathe easy the rest of the afternoon. Maya told Jaewon everything the second he walked through the door. He didn't get angry. Not at first, he just sat down heavily at the kitchen table like something in him had finally given out. "She blames me," he said quietly. "She's not entirely wrong to." Later, he knocked softly on Maya's door. "You handled her well today," he said. "Mrs. Kwon, I know that wasn't easy. I didn't handle her. I just didn't back down." "That's more than most people manage?" He shook his head. "I've spent 2 years afraid of exactly that conversation, and you had it at a playground in under 2 minutes. She's not wrong to be angry," Maya said quietly. "I'd probably feel the same, in her place." "Maybe, but you're not in her place, and I don't want you carrying her grief on top of everyone else's." He took a step closer, close enough that she could see how tired his eyes had gotten. His hand lifted, like he meant to tuck back the strand of hair stuck to her cheek, and for a second neither of them moved. Then he caught himself, dropped his hand, and cleared his throat. "I should let you get some rest," he said, too fast, and stepped back into the hallway. Maya let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding, hands steady, heart considerably less so. He drove to Mrs. Kwon's house himself the next morning, alone, and didn't come back for 3 hours. He never told Maya exactly what was said. What she noticed was that the legal letters stopped, that Mrs. Kwon started calling ahead before her visits, and that a few weeks later, watching Hana attempt a wobbly cartwheel on the lawn, the older woman laughed, really laughed for the first time since the funeral. It wasn't peace exactly, but it was a start. Later, alone in his study, Jaewon spoke to the empty room. "So-yeon, I think this house might learn to laugh again." Across the hall, Maya knelt by her window with her Bible open. But the prayer didn't come easy. Was this real? Or was she just the first steady thing to walk into a house that needed someone steady? Would he look at her the same way if grief hadn't cracked him open first? She whispered anyway, "Lord, guard my heart. Don't let me step where I shouldn't, and don't let me run from something real out of fear either." The house, once hollow, was becoming a home. She just wasn't sure yet what her place in it was. Jaewon had his own version of that fight. Some nights he still sat with the one photo of So-yeon he'd kept out, from the hospital, both babies wrapped and small. He'd catch himself smiling about something Maya had said and then feel the smile turn to guilt, like he'd been caught stealing something that still belonged to his wife. One evening he finally spoke to the photo instead of just at it. "I'm not trying to replace you. I don't think I could if I tried. But the girls have their rhythm back, and I think you'd want me to feel something about the reason why." It didn't feel like betrayal anymore. It felt like permission. Nearly 6 months later, Jaewon asked Maya to come upstairs. There was something he wanted her to see. The window seat was finished, pale wood, a cushion the same yellow as Yuna's blanket, shelves already crowded with books Maya had been reading the girls for weeks. He'd carved something small into the underside of the top shelf, low enough that only someone sitting right there would find it 2 tiny names, and a third space beside them, empty, waiting. "I built this for them," he said. "Somewhere around those first few weeks, I think I was also building space for you, before I let myself admit it." Maya. His hands were deep in his pockets, his heart plainly in his throat. "You came here to do a job, but you gave my daughters their rhythm back. You gave me mine too." He paused. "I don't want you to just be staff anymore. I want you to be family." He swallowed hard. "Will you stay? Not as their nanny? As my wife? As the mother they grow up calling their own?" The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was holy. "You can say no," he added quickly. "I'll never make this house unsafe for you either way. You have a whole life, a brother, dreams I haven't even asked about yet. But if there's any door open in your heart, even a small one, I want to stand in it and ask properly." Maya let out a shaky laugh, wiping a tear before it could fall. "You stand pretty well for a man who used to run from feelings." "I had a good teacher," he said, the corner of his mouth lifting. She looked toward the little carved space, waiting for a third name, thought about the fear she'd walked in with, the earthquake, the paint-stained tiles, the grief turning slowly into something like hope. "Yes," she whispered. His shoulders dropped, relief and something like disbelief moving across his face all at once. He reached for her hand and held it, not to pull her close, but to anchor himself to something new. The wedding was small and unhurried, held in the garden Jaewon had built, and finally finished the same patio that had seen paint fights and aftershocks and every ordinary miracle in between. Strung with lights he'd hung himself, a little crooked. No press, no spectacle, just the people who mattered. Hana and Yuna sat beside Maya's mother in matching white dresses, clapping like they understood exactly what was happening. Beside Mama sat Malik, suit still creased from the box, an acceptance letter tucked in his jacket pocket. The scholarship committee had gotten a quiet boost from Jaewon weeks earlier, something Maya only learned after the ceremony. A few rows back, So-yeon's mother sat with a handkerchief pressed to her mouth, present because Jaewon had asked her himself. Maya wore something simple, lace catching the light, like a quiet kind of prayer. Jaewon stood waiting for her in grey, entirely present for the first time in longer than anyone could remember, no guard up, nothing held back. Maya's mother sat in the front row, eyes bright with tears she didn't bother hiding, watching her daughter step into a love that would protect her the way she'd always prayed it would. When the rings were exchanged, Jaewon and Maya shared a look that said everything words hadn't yet caught up to. Beside them, the twins' delighted clapping stitched the whole scene together, proof that this wasn't just a marriage. It was a family finishing the shape it had been reaching for all along. Before the reception, Mrs. Kwon found Maya alone by the garden gate, and pressed something small and cool into her palm, a thin gold bracelet, worn soft at the clasp. It was so Yun's, she said. I think she'd want the girls to have it someday. I think she'd want you to be the one who decides when. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, not all at once, but it was trust, and trust was the harder thing to hand over. Some evenings later, the four of them sat together on that same patio, no paint this time, just a blanket, sliced mango, and the low gold light of a California evening settling over the hills. Jaewon looked at his daughters, then at his wife. I didn't think they'd ever laugh like this again, he said quietly. They were waiting on you, Maya said. He glanced at her, a small, easy smile breaking through. And on you too. The porch lights flickered on. The house that had once gone silent under the weight of grief now breathed like something alive, finished, finally, the way its architect had never quite managed alone. The twins dozed against their parents, heavy with the good kind of tired that only comes from being loved well. Under the blanket, Jaewon found Maya's hand and held it. She squeezed back, steady, sure, holding the rhythm she'd been trained to all along. Because Maya didn't run when it got hard, she stayed. And because she stayed, a house that had forgotten how to laugh finally remembered. Maya Bennett walked into that mansion as a stranger with one good bag and a promise to try. She walks out of this story as the reason that house is a home. What started as a job became a legacy, one built not on money, but on patience that refused to quit. If this story moved you, drop a comment and let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe for more heartfelt, cinematic stories like this one every week. Until next time, stay patient, stay soft-hearted, and keep watching.